Welcome. What we're going to be covering today is AttendanceFlow. What is AttendanceFlow by Atteniv? It's a cloud-based management platform designed specifically to bridge what we call a mandate compliance gap that exists in a modern hybrid workplace. Since the conclusion of COVID, many companies have now instituted return to work mandates, but they're finding that actual compliance and adherence to those mandates still remains problematic. Our product is really designed to address that, and it's comprised of four main pillars. One is compliance automation. So by that, I mean the platform removes the policy burden from managers by automating the entire disciplinary workflow as it relates to return to office mandates. And that includes, from initial verbal warnings that may need to be issued in terms of violations, but then also formal documentation and possibly even termination documentation surrounding that. It's as you'll see, it's highly configurable and customizable. Another pillar is advanced hybrid scheduling. So as you'll see shortly, administrators can create and customize visually day-to-day hybrid schedules and assign employees in bulk to those, and otherwise manage which employees are assigned to which schedules in which offices, etc. Another aspect or pillar that we have is what we refer to as non-intrusive network presence detection. So we can identify accurately who's in the office by using endpoint security infrastructure logs, such as Zscaler or Microsoft Defender, rather than invasive surveillance that sometimes requires additional hardware or applications. We do also provide some alternatives to that if there's issues surrounding, say, security with providing API access to these logs. We do also have a very lightweight client that can be installed on either PCs or Macs that can detect when someone is present in the office. One of the interesting aspects in our last pillar is office utilization and efficiency. So the system provides real-time analytics to help organizations right-size their real estate footprint. It helps you identify underutilized offices and also ensures that every employee has a workspace when they need it. All of this is supported through a deeply integrated AI feature called Atteniv Intelligence, which is an AI-powered chat assistant that allows managers and HR teams to use natural language questions such as, what is the average attendance rate for all offices, to gain instant data-driven insights. You could think of AttendanceFlow in some instances as kind of a smart thermostat for the modern office. Instead of wasting energy by mandating attendance in an empty building or guessing space needs, it can help you intelligently sense and detect what the proper mix is and how to best utilize your office capacity, all the while ensuring that employees are following the mandates that have been laid forth. Without further ado, let's jump into the application and start seeing some of its features and functionality. What you're looking at here is the main homepage that every user would encounter. Several of the menu options and categories that you see below, such as analytics, administration, etc., these are all role-based in terms of whether they would be surfaced or not to the user. In this instance, I'm an admin user, so everything is accessible. But these first couple of menu options that you see under Home and My Schedule, this would be available to every user. So when you come into this, it gives you some information just about your profile, also identifies what schedule that you're currently assigned to, and then provides different metrics around your attendance and your adherence to the policies and guidelines laid forth by the organization. You can also then see any recent requests that you may have made in terms of, for instance, working from home or a vacation request. And you can also then see any infractions that may have been accumulated or created as a result of you, for instance, being expected to be at work on a given day and not being in attendance, and furthermore not having an excuse to, for instance, work from home. Obviously, there's any number of reasons why someone won't be in an office during the day that they're assigned. You know, they could be on off-site training, they could be at a client site, could be a doctor's appointment. There's any number of reasons, and those, if approved, would constitute acceptable absences. So from here, what you would see is when you click on My Schedule, this is where you would then, for instance, if I know next week that, as you could see from this calendar view here, that I'm expected to be in the office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week, you know, I could request, for instance, to work remotely for a given day, and then I can provide a reason, and in addition to that, provide some additional comments or further clarifications. And these, as you'll see as we proceed later in the demo, everything here is, you know, fully customizable by a client. You can then also, for instance, look back historically and see, you know, your overall attendance for a given month. And so those with a green check mark are those where you were expected to be in the office and you were in the office as expected. On the 5th, you could see that I had requested to work remotely and it was approved. However, my work remotely request on Thursday the 6th was denied. The inbox, is, as you would typically find, is this will include any warnings, for instance, that have been issued. And in addition, if you're a manager, you would see any requests that are made by your team to, for instance, work remotely or a vacation request, etc. Once we proceed forward into the people category of menus options, this is primarily tailored for managers. So this allows you, in the subsequent number of steps that you see here, this allows you to manage and have visibility to how your own team is performing. And it's also set up in a way that it also reflects kind of the corporate hierarchy. So in this case, I'm actually acting as a CEO, so I'm going to see not only those metrics for people who report directly to me, but I would also then see the indirect reports as well. So it provides some overall metrics about performance, overall compliance rate, number of escalations, things like that. You can also, furthermore, because in this instance I've got several different departments who report in through me, you can also then see, you know, some information about those teams and how they're performing. Now we get into the My Team functionality, and this is what's really tailored for managers specifically. So for instance, you could see for the week of the 12/15, you can quickly, by looking at this, see who was in attendance as expected. You could see any violations that may have occurred for that individual. In this case, for Andrea Richards on 12/16, she was expected to have been in the office, but she wasn't, and hence you have a violation. And as you can see here, there's also a convenient hover effect where you can see a heat map, and this gives you a broader perspective of overall attendance going back 90 days. So this allows you to kind of quickly glance through and at a very high level see how everyone is actually performing insofar as their adherence to the policies and guidelines. What you can also do is this also reflects the organizational hierarchy. So as being the CEO, as Emma, as you can see, I have, you know, a couple of direct reports, And then I can also then drill down and see my indirect reports, in this case those who are reporting directly to Rafa. And from that you could also then navigate further down. So reporting to Rafa includes all of these other individuals, and so you're able to drill down into specific teams to quickly get an understanding of how each team is performing. One additional feature that we added is a tree view. And so this is a organizational hierarchy, and it allows you to, drill down into specific departments and teams. And obviously the org structure is going to vary based upon the company. So different companies, org level 1 may be called a division, and another might be a department, for instance. And the data that you're seeing here would be data that's seeded and maintained through active integrations. For instance, with HRIS systems, currently we support UKG and Workday, but others are certainly in the works. What you can also see from this view is, in this case with Stephanie, you can see her individual compliance percentage, but then you can also see the team compliance. So if we look at Tamara, for instance, her individual compliance with the office expectations for her, she's got 76% compliance percentage, and as an overall team, she's got 84%. And the reason some of these appear highlighted and others not, like in green, is based on the business rules that you configure for your organization. So you could set different thresholds for what you consider to be acceptable or ones that potentially could be at risk. So from there, and as you could see, it also reflects, when I went back to the regular table view, you could see that it also reflected those selections I made from the tree view. Let's now look at some of the analytics capabilities and features of the platform. And these number of capabilities here is really intended, primarily I would say for C-level executives, although managers certainly can find it useful as well, especially those who are higher up on the org chart. And we can begin by looking at Atteniv Intelligence. One of the benefits of having a new platform such as AttendanceFlow is AI was built in from the very get-go. This isn't a bolted-on AI solution like you see with many legacy platforms. So for instance, and we precede this with a number of different examples or prompts that you can use. In this instance, we'll give this one a shot. So this brings back, in this case, overall compliance for all of your users within the organization. When you look now at the attendance menu selection, this gives you an overall understanding of the mix between in-office and remote days. So for instance, during this period of time that we're looking at here, there would be 72 what we call in-office days, which represent about 58% of the time that people are expected to be in the office. And there's also then 38 days where it's entirely remote. So this is kind of a blended view across the organization, and it's intended just to show you overall, what mix you have between in-office and remote users. And this then gives you the number of absent days, which reflects the percentage of time that individuals were expected to be in the office, but for whatever reason weren't. And so that's what that number represents. They could be both excused or unexcused absences. What you can also then see is, since I'm coming in as the CEO, I can furthermore drill down into each of my organizations, and within each organization then you can drill down and see specific users, teams. You can understand how they've been performing. You can see the number of infractions, for instance, for this particular user, and you can see their overall attendance log as well. this also allows you to have a similar tree view that we illustrated previously. So when we get into the scoreboard, this information can be very beneficial when you're doing gamification type inducements for people to return to the office. So for instance, in this case, you could see that Sean has exceptionally high compliance with the mandates or the guidelines. So you can drill down into each of these, and you could quickly look assess how individuals are doing. And then there's an at-risk. And so the at-risk are those employees who are kind of bumping up against the thresholds that you've established for that organization. And so it's useful, in particular for HR, to kind of stay on top of which employees, for whatever reason, are having difficulty following the mandates. And of course, then you can also kind of drill down deeper into the organization via looking at their managers, their organization, etc. This, can also be then exported. So now we come into the Office Audit Optimization series of features. And so in this instance, we're looking at Denver. You could see any of the different offices that exist for this organization. And what's particularly interesting about this information is it allows you to identify office utilization overall. So in this case, for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you could actually see that that there's actually there's a capacity overage in this instance. So you've got a capacity of 13 employees, but there's actually more than that who are supposed to be in attendance for those 3 days there during the middle of the week. So this, tells you quickly, what is your office capacity, and do you need to make some right sizing or make some changes to the overall lease, for instance, when it comes up. So you can look at different offices, and you could see in this case with Denver that we have quite a lot of excess capability or capacity. And you could see, in fact, the average utilization for that particular office is only 33%. So there's a lot of additional capacity that's not being currently used. And that kind of feeds directly. And you can also then see it broken down by specific schedules. So you could see how that utilization is being applied to the different schedules that exist. So in this case, there's three different schedules that have been assigned to this organization that are relevant for this office. And it then shows you the excess or available capacity. This conveniently then leads into this office expense. And we think this is of particular importance to C-level executives who want to gain a better understanding of how they can right-size their office capacity to reflect their organization. So in this case, you could see, for instance, that if we look at the New York office, for instance, and this information that you're looking at in terms of like leasing cost or monthly rent and operating expenses, this information can be directly pulled, say, from NetSuite. We have a deep integration with NetSuite where that information can be dynamically kept up to date. So in this case, the New York office has a monthly rent nearly $50,000 and an office operating expense of about $15,000. So leaving that approximately $60,000, you can see that for this instance, the New York office actually has capacity for 28 employees, but actually only 7 employees are typically on site at any given time. So if you assumed, for instance, that all 28 employees are in the office, then the actual cost would be, $2,000 approximately. But because, it's largely underutilized, your actual cost is a little over $8,000. So this right away can be a flag to to indicate that you might want to make some changes in your office leasing situation, for instance. We will now look at some of the features and capabilities under the Administration tab. Foremost among them is the scheduling piece. And so what this provides you is it shows you a list of current schedules that are available. And a schedule, doesn't necessarily have to be a hybrid schedule. It could be, someone may be assigned a schedule where they're expected to be on site 5 days a week. It's more of just a naming convention than anything else. But what this allows you to see is a quick overview, the number of schedules, and provides you some metrics as well about overall compliance within people who are assigned that schedule. And it breaks it down into a couple of different buckets or categories to allow for further filtering. You can create any number of schedules. What this allows you to see is quickly at a glance, you can see any unassigned users. So these are employees who, for whatever reason, have yet to be assigned a schedule. And various alerts can also be set up as part of the business rule management piece, where you can bring visibility to the fact that some employees have yet to be assigned a schedule. A new employee, for instance, coming on board may not be automatically assigned a schedule. There are features, we obviously support single sign-on, for instance, and depending upon the single sign-on identity provider, information can be sent along with the information from that single sign-on request, which would allow us to, for instance, determine which office, for instance, an employee belongs to. But if we go back into schedules, if we click on a given schedule, you can see right away at a glance that this particular schedule is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, as they're expected to be on site those days. And the block here below allows you to both see who's assigned to that schedule, but also then you can assign anyone who isn't currently assigned to a schedule. So if we go back, for instance, in this case, you can also furthermore kind of filter by office, for instance. This allows you, when you have a large population of users, this would allow you to more quickly filter them down. You can select one or multiple users, and then you can assign them to that given schedule. So it's very convenient and simple to use. On the offices, at a quick glance, this shows you, obviously, the offices that are associated with a particular organization. And you can also then drill down into each office and see which employees are assigned to that office. And you can also then see the relevant schedules that are affiliated with the office. So, you may have some employees who are part of hybrid schedule 1. Maybe they're part of a particular schedule that doesn't have anyone assigned or isn't relevant for that office. Obviously, those schedules wouldn't appear here, but this allows you to quickly see, who, from which schedule, who's actually assigned to the office. And then you can obviously get further information about that office. You can also manually update and include the expense information, the leasing information, and so forth, information that feeds directly then into the office expense analytics. Users and roles is, one would anticipate this is a listing of roles and users. And the platform also provides an easy ability to create new roles and to define specifically for that roles which options that role has access to. So it's highly flexible. You can create any number of different roles. A user can only be associated with a single role. But this shows you a quick breakdown as to different roles, and then you can see the number of users who are assigned to those roles. The business rules really speak to the heart of the customization and configurability of the platform. So out of the box, it comes with a number of different pre-populated business rules, and you can modify them to your organization's needs and requirements. So, for instance, you can set up different thresholds, and you can add new conditions, etc. We look at another one here, for instance. This particular business rule, and some of them are tailored and geared towards notifications, and that's what this one is specifically associated with. So when your office utilization percentage reaches a certain amount, you could, for instance, create an alert, which would then be sent to the appropriate role or individual within that role. So these business rules provide really all the full customization that you need. Request types. Earlier on in the demo, we talked about some of the different options, like when you request to work remotely, for instance. That information comes from this code listed set of request types. So obviously you can create new ones, remove them, etc. I think one of the most useful pieces of this that is really central to the entire platform is the infraction policy. So this is where you would define, and this typically would be done by someone in HR management, would define what the different thresholds are that need to be applied for the organization. So for instance, in this case, you've got after two violations, an employee should receive a verbal warning. But you could define additional ones. For instance, a written warning maybe would occur after 6. And you can define who the party then is responsible for the written warning. So you could see in the case of the verbal warning, after 2 violations, it's the manager's responsibility to provide that verbal warning. And this also applies directly to the notifications and tasks that are built into the application. So when a verbal warning is required, the manager would receive notification of that. And once they then have performed that verbal warning, there's an acknowledgement that they would have to click upon to indicate that they indeed have provided that warning. And that's what the action deadline is. So if they haven't performed, in this case, that verbal warning within 5 days, it can be escalated up to the manager's manager. So this is really a key, obviously a foundational aspect to the entire application. I think that really accounts for most of the relevant pieces of the administration. We do have a knowledge base that we're adding. There's auditing and logging capabilities, as one might expect with an enterprise application such as this. And one of the features that we're actually currently enhancing is building a really comprehensive set of setup wizards that will basically walk you through onboarding a new organization. And it will have a sequence of steps that need to be performed. The intention, obviously, is we want to get you up and running as quickly as possible. And as I'd mentioned, we do have any number of different integrations. We support, SSO with Okta and Azure, for instance, and any other, and a number of other integrations as well. So I think that really constitutes the bulk of, or the main functionality associated with the administration portion of the platform.